Hey everyone, Greta here, and welcome to today's episode. And today we will be talking about how often should you practice yoga. Now, this is one of the more popular questions, especially for people who are kind of new to the yoga practice. And I think that this question also has a lot of different factors, like the studio that you're practicing in. Does it have a lot of classes per day, or different kinds of practices that suit your schedule? What about the price package? Is it just one kind, or do they have a lot of different packages ranging from seven classes per month to an unlimited package, things like that? And also, do you only practice at a yoga studio setting, or do you also have your own practice at home? Okay, so especially from Hong Kong, there are a lot of different studios. Some are smaller, some are bigger ones. And for the bigger ones, mostly a lot of people would sign up for the unlimited package. And that is my background as well. So I've seen a lot of people practicing very, very regularly, and they practice daily. Like I've seen people doing 3 classes or even 4 per day, and they feel like they don't, like if they do any less, they feel like it's not enough. So to me, it's more like an addiction than anything. Sorry, I don't want to be judgy, but for me, even when I was in that field, I would practice no more than 2 classes each time. And that was before I started doing Ashtanga. So once I switched to Ashtanga, then it was just, one session would be enough. I didn't need to do any more sessions because that Ashtanga practice is more than enough than anything. So again, some people, because of the studio, can offer a lot of different classes. So some people would do like a more challenging class to begin with, and then ending with a more gentle healing practice. So there's a lot of different combinations. So how often should you really, really practice? Again, it really depends. More isn't necessarily better, and yoga is so different than any other sports. And even though yoga, to a lot of people is super addictive, I think that you should also find a balance point between doing your practice and also resting, because we'll talk about physical yoga right now. Because even though we shouldn't compare physical yoga practice to sports, you are still doing a physical workout, okay? And science has proven that even for professional athletes, they don't train every single day, or they have a different training. They don't have the same training every day. Sometimes they would have a more vigorous training, but then they would often pair it with a day of more gentler stretch or even rest, because the body needs rest in order to keep the muscles and the body to have a good performance, even though the word performance isn't really the ideal word when you talk about yoga. But then again, it's more about the physical aspects of the practice that we're talking about. So you would really need to watch yourself, whether or not you are working or you're practicing the physical yoga to the point where you have exhausted yourself. So I'm just going to relate to my own personal practice. My primary practice is Ashtanga, and I remember when I first started, I did a year of the lead class. And for those of us who are not familiar with what lead is, it's basically you just go to the room and the teacher would tell you what to do and just follow. So it's more like regular vinyasa setting, except it's done in an Ashtanga practice. So after being familiar with the sequence, I had a chat with the teacher because I wanted to try Mysore. But then I was extremely intimidated by the whole idea of it. So I went to ask them, and then they said, you might want to start off with practicing like 4 days a week, and then once you get used to everything, then you would need to practice 6 days a week. And it was exactly that scared me off. And I didn't step into the Mysore room at least until 1 year later, when I had no choice but to do Mysore. But that's another story. But it was that, because my body physically cannot do the same vigorous practice every single day. It doesn't matter if it's Ashtanga or Vinyasa, whatever, or handstand or backbends, whatever. I cannot do the same thing every single day. That's just how my body functions. So even with Ashtanga, I know that we should be doing this, but I cannot. My body physically can't do it. So the max that I could do was 4 days. So again, it really boils down to how much your body could do. It's not about, pushing to your max. It's never about that, because again, you need to step back and realize that the physical yoga practice, the asana practice, even though it's very, very physical, you still need to balance things out. It's not like push, because if you push too much, then again, you might have some negative results. You might end up injuring yourself because your body's not recovered yet. So it was more like, for me, it was more like trial and error. So in the beginning of my yoga practice, not my Ashtanga practice, my yoga practice, I was doing it very, very regularly. Like, even though physically practicing at a yoga studio setting, I could do it only 4 days a week because of my work back then. On the days where I couldn't practice at the yoga studio, I would practice at home. I would just remember whatever I could remember and just do it. And then I realized that, hey, my body didn't like it, that I was getting more and more tired. So eventually I kind of found a way that, I could only do 4 days a week of more physically demanding practice. And now what I do is I practice every day, but then I don't do the same practice every day, because yoga is not just the physical side of it. There are a lot of different things. So even for the physical side, I don't do the same thing. Sometimes I do Ashtanga, and then on other days I would do yin, maybe more mindful movements, mixing with handstands, stuff like that. So it's a huge mix. And often I would, on days where the practice is more slow, I would incorporate more of pranayama, breathing techniques, and even meditation, just to make the practice more wholesome. I don't want, again, it's just my choice, to have a very linear yoga practice, because yoga is not linear. It's very, very multi-dimensional, and I want to, include a bit of everything into it, and also the time of the practice, the duration of the practice, it's not fixed. Sometimes because of the schedule, I could just squeeze in a 30-minute practice. Other times, during my days off when I was in Toronto, I would practice early in the morning, and then I would have another practice later in the evening, and they would be very different practices. So again, it really depends on what I want. Sometimes I would just, sit and meditate and just breathe for a good while, and that would be it. And of course, that the way that I practice now has evolved tremendously. Remember, in the beginning, again, it was purely physical, and I didn't want to skip my practice even during my injury. And I know that this resonates with a lot of people, especially for those of us who are very much obsessed with the physical side of it. I'm not gonna lie, even though I always say, yoga isn't about the asana, I cannot just kind of, bypass that dimension of it, that perspective. It's, of course, it's very, very, very attractive, and that was me. So I had kept on practicing even during my injury, and at that time, it wasn't very mindful. So it had gotten to a point where I am still paying for the consequences now. And I'm not regretting anything. I'm not blaming my younger self for doing that. It's a lesson to learn. And even now, like on days where I feel very tired, or for some reason my body would just kind of pull muscle here and there, maybe because of old age, I don't know. I would still practice. I'll still practice, but then I'll practice a lot more mindfully. Because of the consequence of not resting when I got injured when I was younger. Now I have a yoga butt, like it's constant, like it's been, I don't know how long. So sometimes they flare up for no reason. Even to this day, sometimes it would just poof, and on days when I feel that, okay, like my hamstrings are definitely complaining, then I would still practice, but I won't go to that physical level. I'll, take it easier, or maybe take an extra breath and do it. So, and also, there are a lot of the yoga thing, because again, most of us are attracted to the physical aspect of it. So even though, yoga isn't about performance, or yoga isn't about competitive or anything at all, but because there's still a physical workout of it, then we cannot neglect that part. And science has actually proven that the body needs rest time in order to keep a sustainable practice. Even professional athletes, all those like crazily talented, crazily hardworking athletes that we see in those like maybe Olympics or other sports events, they train a lot, but then their training is not the same every single day. And even though the training might be very intense and intensive, they would also rest. And resting is important. So that's why even when we're practicing yoga, as long as we're doing anything physical, we need rest time. And rest doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. Especially when we talk about yoga, it's so there's so many varieties of practices. Then, maybe blend in a few gentle stretches, maybe for half an hour a day or something. Like maybe not workout, but maybe do like a strong practice, like 2 days, and then have a more slower, more static, more introspective practice on the third day, and then, repeat the cycle and just see how things are, right? Because, again, I know that especially for people who are doing yoga as more like an alternative to kind of escape or a feel better or workout, it is important to have that practice, but then be more accepting to different styles of practice, because you never know what you might come across, and you might actually enjoy something that you don't normally do. Like, I've been hosting this monthly gentle stretch class, and it's actually very, very, very welcoming to a lot of practitioners, because, for a lot of people, especially work and also their yoga practice is more the vinyasa style. So it's very dynamic. You sweat a lot. So often when there's a time when that pulls you back and makes you stop, then you actually benefit a lot. And I know that because of our lifestyle, the way that we're conditioned to live, that we want to max out everything. Like even in that vinyasa class, you want to go to a point where you can sweat that extra drop of sweat, But when you don't sweat, you feel like, oh, you don't sweat enough. You might be like, oh, today's practice isn't that great or whatever. That's very human. Because that's how we are trained to think or trained to believe in. But then, the body and actually the mind needs the space to slow down and basically kind of do nothing, quote unquote, in order for the entire system to function better. So for me, the yoga practice is more about quality and not about quantity. Sometimes, maybe you want to start with a strong vinyasa class or vinyasa practice. Like for me, that's what I usually like to go with. But then all of a sudden I'll be like, you know what, no. And then I'll just stop and do a very long shavasana. And I remember that was one time when I practiced with a teacher, like he was really, really cool. Near the end of the practice, like maybe towards the last 15 minutes, he would be like, if you want a longer shavasana, you can just, do a shavasana right now. For those of us who don't want a long shavasana, let's continue. And there were people who actually went into shavasana. And I remember I was one of them for a while. And that felt really, really, really good. Because having a long shavasana is actually a luxury. And I think that I recommend everyone to try it once in a while and just see how that is. Because, for me, I want to practice yoga for a very, very long time. I don't want it to be, a short-lived fling. That thought never was with me at the beginning. It kind of evolved. But then I feel like, it doesn't hurt to mix and match, and it doesn't hurt to be less harsh on yourself. And that's it for my sharing for today, and I'll see you again soon. Take it easy.